Hi, my name's Steve Saupe. I'm one of the professors in the biology department at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. One of my specialty areas is botany, and so we're here today to talk a little bit about medicinal plants. We're now down by the St. John's Lake and looking at a plant that I always joke likes to keep its feet wet. This is one of the willows. Willows are typically found where the soil is moist. That's where they tend to thrive. Willows have been traditionally used as an analgesic to reduce pain, also good for reducing fever, reducing inflammation. Those symptoms sound like something we might use aspirin for, which isn't a surprise because aspirin is ultimately derived from the willow. In the bark of the willow in particular, it's rich in a chemical called salicin. And that chemical gets its name from the scientific name of the willows. The scientific name is salix. And so chemists identified this molecule in the willow and called it salicin. And it's essentially an acid that's attached to a sugar. And so when you were to chew on the twigs of willow or use it in a tea or to ingest that salicin, our bodies would then separate the sugar from the salicin molecule, and what you're left with is the acid salicylic acid. And then that has the analgesic properties for this particular plant. The problem with salicylic acid is it will bother your stomach. And so a chemist back in Germany a long time ago realized that if he added an acetyl group to that salicylic acid, the molecule would still have its pain relieving and fever reducing properties, but it wouldn't bother your stomach so much. And so when he added that chemical to it, he got acetosalicylic acid, which is our aspirin. And aspirin actually gets its name from a slightly different plant. The A comes from the acetyl part, and the spirin part of the name aspirin comes from another plant that likes wetlands called spirea. And so that plant also produces the salicylic acid and the salicin in the bark. So willows have been used to treat fever, reduce fever, to pain and inflammation. Again, we're right along the lake here at St. John's, and this is just kind of this is part of the St. John's rain garden, designed to catch any of the water that's running off from near the new guest house before it goes into the lake. But growing here wild is this little plant, which is hard to see, I realize, but this one is called St. John's wort. And this is last year's flowering stalks of St. John's wort. When it's in flower, it's spectacular. It's got beautiful clusters of yellow flowers with lots of pretty stamens in there. So it looks beautiful. It's been used medicinally for as a sleep aid and for reducing anxiety and depression in individuals. Very commonly used in Europe, probably a little less so here in North America, but it seems to have some efficacy in treating those different things. It's called St. John's wort because it flowers midsummer, typically right around the birth of St. John the Baptist, which we celebrate on June 24th, I believe, and so hence the common name St. John's wort. If you were to look at the leaves of the St. John's wort very carefully, what you'll see on there are little glands, and those glands will be either black or sometimes they're clear, and it's those glands that contain the active ingredient that gives this particular plant its medicinal properties. It produces a chemical, a bunch of chemicals, but one that's common is called hypericin. And if you look and see the little black glands under there, that's where the hypericin is. If the glands are clear, that's one of the precursors that lead to the production of the hypericin. Now, hypericin is also a photosensitizing agent, and so if you use St. John's wort medicinally, you should keep track to see if you have any rashes as a result of being out in the sun. Because what can happen is that active ingredient will interact with ultraviolet light to produce an agent that will cause a skin rash. Usually that's not a problem in the doses that you would take medicinally, but it's something to watch out for that is a possible side effect. The next plant that we'll take a look at is one called Mayapple. It gets the name May because it's one of our early spring flowering plants, and it's just coming up here right against the wall of the greenhouse. We have quite a few that are growing in this space here. It's called apple because it produces a fruit that looks actually a little more like an egg, but it's greenish, looks a little like a green apple. But don't let the name fool you, because virtually all parts of the mayapple plant are extremely toxic. The foliage, as well as the underground root part of the mayapple, and I'm going to dig it up now just to kind of show you what the underground part looks like. So here's what we call a rhizome of the mayapple. So it's coming from this underground stem, and then it creeps along the ground and sends up a plant at intervals. The scientific name of the mayapple is called Podophyllum peltatum. Peltate means a little bit like an umbrella, so we can see that the leaf stalk is attached to the underside of the leaves, a little bit like it would be an umbrella. And podo comes from the word foot, and phyllum for leaf. So these leaves reminded a botanist who was naming it a little bit of a foot, kind of like a bird foot, if you will. Now, mayapples contain a number of different chemicals that are very toxic. One of them is called podophylltoxin. And podophylltoxin is very similar to the toxin in the yew. What it does is it will block the ability of cells to divide, which means that mayapple is an excellent inhibitor of cell division. Well, there are two times you want to inhibit cell division from a medicinal point of view. One, for warts. Mayapple is one of the main treatments for treating venereal and other kind of skin warts. What's done is the podophylltoxin, which is found in the rhizome and in the green parts of the plant, are extracted into a resin and then applied to the wart. And what that will do then is it will actually kill those cells. It's almost like a burn. And it works very well. You can also use that same principle to treat cancer. And so that same chemical would be used, ingested, and then it would hopefully target those cancer cells to prevent them from growing. So it works for both ways. Traditionally, this plant has been used as a purgative for people to clean themselves out, both via vomiting and through stuff coming out the other end. But self-medicating is not a great idea because it is so toxic. One of my students a few years ago decided he wanted to take some pictures of the mayapple plant, and he came out and he grabbed it and he was handling it and photographing it, and he wound up getting some of the juice of the mayapple on his skin, and it caused significant burns on his skin, a whole series of necrotic lesions. So I learned my lesson from him that if I'm going to handle this particular plant, I'm going to want to wear some gloves to avoid getting that resin on my skin. So mayapple is one of the plants now that's been used medicinally to treat warts, for cancer treatment as well, because of the active ingredient able to stop cell division.
We've learned lots and lots of interesting things about plant use from the natives. That they've passed down their traditions to us. We've adopted them in a variety of different ways.